Welcome to Day 78 on the Trail. We only have 2 readings for today. The 78th Psalm, which seems appropriate for Day 78, and Tobit chapter 4, verse 20 through 5, verse 3. Psalm 78 is one of the longer psalms, and it moves to a climax in the choice of Zion as the place for God's temple, and of David as the servant who will be the shepherd of Israel. Now, most scholars connect the psalm's triumphant ending with the reign of David, which would provide a rough date for its composition in the mid-10th century. The heart of Psalm 78 is found in verses 2 through 8, which will be our focus for today. Now, since Psalm 78 is relatively long, I'd encourage you to take a moment to maybe pause this video and review verses 2 through 8. According to the psalmist, God can be known in 2 ways. First, through his words, the Torah, and the instructions that we have been reading in Exodus and Leviticus. However, even before the law was given, Israel had witnessed the powerful acts of God on their behalf during their experience in Egypt and Sinai, as recorded in Exodus. As we have seen in our reading so far, Torah, or God's instruction for his people, is a combination of story and commandments. That is, the commandments are understood in the context of the story of God and his people, and the story is incomplete without the commandments. Therefore, it is important to the psalmist that these experiences be passed along to the next generation. Nothing, even the difficult moments or the sinfulness of their parents, is hidden or kept from them. The children can learn from their experiences, both good and bad. This deep connection between the story and the commandments, what God has said and what God has done, provides a helpful illustration for the modern conception of belief and faith. In Psalm 78, God is angered because the Israelites did not trust him enough to depend on his saving work. This was personal. Faith was not primarily an intellectual consent to a certain set of ideas about God. Faith is more than a mental assent to a set of stated propositions or the transfer of some special knowledge or insider's code. Instead, faith was an attitude toward God, which takes his commands and promises seriously in their daily life. As is the case in the New Testament, faith is seen as a trusting dependence that defines the heart of discipleship. Another way to grasp this dichotomy between our modern conception of belief and faith can be seen in the difference between the Latin phrases fides quae and fides qua. The first, fides quae, is literally translated faith that. For example, we may believe that God is one. The second hits closer to the idea of faith. Fides qua is the faith by which, that is, faith by which we respond to God with our lives. In fact, the Latin word from which we derive the word creed, as in the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed, comes from the Latin credo, which means I put my heart into something. Therefore, a creed is not simply a stated series of beliefs or a set of theological propositions that we choose to agree with, but it describes an orientation toward life and God. In this larger sense, faith is a mysterious combination of trust, relationship, knowledge, reason, tradition, obedience, and our response. All of these and more contribute to our faith. Therefore, as Christians and disciples of Jesus, we should remember that we do not only believe in the words contained in the Scriptures, but that we trust in the living Christ, who is still alive and therefore still teaches in many different ways. This is the faith that we are to pass along to our children and our children's children. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.